So I'm going to ask you a strange question. What are you absolutely certain about? Not what you believe or what you hope, but what are you certain is true for you? So I've discovered something over the years. The most important moments in my life, the times that have really changed things for me, didn't begin because I found an answer to something. They actually took place because I became less certain. And that's what we're going to talk about today, and how you can find a place to be in yourself without that certainty that lets you feel just as stable as possible. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, I'm Leezá Steindorf. Welcome back to Ground of Being, Living Questions. Last time we wondered whether what we call a problem might actually be inviting us into a different question. And today I'd like to stay with that idea a little bit longer because I've noticed something. It's often not our circumstances that keep us stuck to where we are. It's our certainty about what we believe those circumstances mean. So when something difficult happens, our minds are astonishingly quick. I mean, they're just like lightning speed. And before we've even noticed it, we've already decided what happened, what it means, who's responsible, what we need to do next. It's like instantaneous. And we don't even realize that we've made those decisions. They feel right, that this is, of course it's that way, right? So I've been wondering, how often do we mistake that familiarity for a truth of our own? And it's not because we're foolish. It's because we're human, right? Our minds are designed to make sense of the world. Like we create meanings and beliefs in order to navigate. And we do it really beautifully. But making sense of something isn't always the same thing as seeing it clearly. And I find it fascinating that two people can live through the exact same situation, same event, and walk away with a completely different experience about it. The event is shared, like they both were there, but their experience is different. And that has made me so curious for so long, like what else is happening between what occurs and what we experience. And that's where my attention goes, because it's not about who's right or who's wrong. Who cares, really? But that space in between of what happened and what I made that mean and what they made that mean. So I can remember more than one conversation where I was absolutely convinced that I understood what was happening. Like, of course, that this happened and that's the reason, right? I was clear. I had my evidence. I could explain it. And then someone comes and asks me a question. I'm like, well, that's interesting. I didn't have the answer. And it was so simple that I almost missed it. What if what I have concluded isn't really what happened? That was powerful, right? And I didn't answer it immediately. I actually sat with it and thought about it. And that certainty, that insistence, that rigid conviction started to ease. It didn't go away, but it became soft enough that I could really notice what was going on from a different perspective. Yeah. And could see things that I didn't see before when I was absolutely certain what had happened. And that's happened so often now that I've actually become very careful with being that certain, with making conclusions and being so rigid in what I think I know. So now, these days, I'm much less interested in asking, am I right about something? But totally interested in, what am I not seeing yet? Because for me, that's where curiosity begins. And I also have to say there's so much more than what we think is there, right? They've done studies on people, and when they're taken into meditation or when they do brain scans, people think they saw like 2, 3, 4, 5 things, but they have actually seen hundreds of things in their peripheral vision and even in front of them that they didn't make note of. And I think that's what happens with us, right? So curiosity, for me, has become one of those trustworthy tools, really companion, in my life. Because it doesn't make me certain about something, but it helps me stay in relationship with what's going on, instead of only making conclusions about a reality that I think is taking place. Does that make sense? So if you're interested, as a practice this week, this is what I'd like to offer to you. I invite you to notice something, like pay attention to the moments when you hear yourself saying, oh, I know, or that's just the way it is. And don't try and change your mind. Don't try and not do that. Just become curious. So what is it that I'm certain about? Like, what do I know for sure, right? Who was it? I think Mark Twain said, it's not the things I don't know, it's the things I'm certain about that just aren't so, right? So instead of what you're so certain about, so you can ask, what am I so certain about? And then, what is it that allows me to be so certain? Like, how do I know that for so sure? What is it that's happened, or what am I using as evidence to have that kind of certainty? And give yourself the chance to just sit with that idea. Question. Sit in the question. You don't need an answer. Just notice what happens when that rigidity of certainty just loosens a little bit. And the reason that people want to be certain is because it feels safer. It feels like if I know, nothing can shake me. I'm solid. But here's something very interesting. And I come also from a background of movement sciences. If somebody is standing rigid, knees locked, shoulders locked, hunkered down, if somebody pushes them, they fall over easily. But if somebody stands with their knees slightly bent, their shoulders loose, their belly open, and someone pushes them, they can bend. They can move. So that certainty in our lives makes us rigid, and it keeps us stuck. And it's very easy to fall over that way. But when we can be soft and curious, it's like, I'm pretty sure it's this way, but maybe it's not. And then just to be open to that, it's really super powerful, because then there are other things that you might be able to see, just like that research I've shared with you, that you didn't think you was really there in the first place. So I'm going to give you a question about curiosity. And this literally happened. Just an example about being certain about something. So I had some young children over once for a dinner, and the families were there, and I had a very large cookie jar on the counter. And one of the kids came in and they're ogling the cookie jar, and it's like, can I have a cookie? I said, absolutely. Right after dinner, you can pick out the cookie that you want. Great. They were happy. They walk away. I turn to go do my thing, leave the kitchen. I come back in, and that child is on the counter with their hand in the cookie jar. Now, if I ask you, what do you think they were doing? I'm pretty sure you're going to say you know exactly what they were doing. They were trying to steal a cookie. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going to guess that's what you can conclude. That's what you're certain about. But I wasn't certain. I was curious. Honestly, I was curious. I was like, so what are you doing on the counter? I'm checking, says this little kid. It's like, you're checking? Yeah. I said, what are you checking? Your hands in the cookie jar. If they're soft. I said, uh-huh. Are they? Uh-huh. Puts the lid on the cookie jar, gets down, walks away. Now, I know for a fact, because it's happened to me when I've told this story before, that people are like, oh, and you were so dumb you believe that? Actually, I absolutely believe that. I don't think that we believe other people when they're actually telling us the truth. But here's the interesting thing. Whether he was telling the truth or not is really irrelevant. What was important for me in that situation is that I was curious about why that person was doing something I had just said they didn't need to do. They weren't going to get a cookie until after dinner. So if you think about, that's kind of a fanciful example. But if you think about your work situations, think about your family situations, think about arguments you've had with friends or with neighbors, I promise you, similar dynamics are going on, and we don't question them. We don't go to curiosity because we're so certain that that's really what's going on. We're so certain that that's really what's happening. Okay? So this week I'd like to offer you a practice if you're interested. Okay? Just notice Pay attention to the moments when you hear yourself, either you say it out loud or inside yourself, I know whatever it is, or that's just the way it is. Those times where you have such a, I'm going to say rigid certainty, a certainty that doesn't move, and don't try and change your mind. Simply become curious, like notice it. Just becoming aware that you're doing that is huge. And then in those situations, ask yourself, what am I so certain about? And then if you want to ask, you can also say, what allows me to be so certain? Like in the situation with the cookie jar, I could say, well, he's on the counter and his hand is in the jar. Okay, I still don't know 100% that he was stealing the cookie. I don't know exactly why he had his hand in the jar. I know what I think. I know what it looks like, but I still don't know the truth for him, right? So you can ask yourself, what allows me to be so certain? And then just sit with that. You don't need an answer. Just notice when that certainty just gives a little bit, yeah? And sometimes that's all it takes is just to ask a question or sit with a question for something completely different to come into view. Trust me, it's happened to me a lot, okay? So, and leave your comments. We have a wonderful community here. I love to read your comments. I will respond. Share what your ideas are, share what your experiences are, and be lovely to have you participate in the community. So thank you for joining me today. If this conversation gave you something to think about that you want to kind of sit with and ponder, I'd love to have you join me again next week. Subscribe to the channel and you'll know when new clips come out. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, perhaps invite them to the conversation too. So sometimes the most generous thing we can offer someone else isn't a conclusion. It's actually a question. All right? Until next time then, be well.